Alright, let me get started by saying I know I'm pretty late to this drama. I didn't really catch wind of it until recently, and there's still like the process of researching, writing scripts, voicing it, all that stuff. I'm also going to be going over some of her fans/white knights in this video because those are semi-relevant to the situation as well. I mean, at this point there's plenty of proof of her tracing, so don't feel it necessary to try and dig up any more. And I'll be mostly responding to her response as well as other common arguments I come across. And like the literal moment I finished writing the script, Spoctor dropped a video, so I had to rewrite like the entire thing. So without further ado, let's just get into this. If you're like me and you had no idea what was happening until someone told you about it, basically a larger gacha tuber known as Cutie was caught tracing from various sources, and side note, I honestly die inside every time I have to say Cutie's name, so that's just what I'm gonna call her for the rest of the video, just Cutie, and just cut off the pun part. There were a lot of exposed posts on both YouTube and Instagram. One of the more prominent artists Cutie traced from is known as Cutie Arts, who actually passed away like this February, I think, but I actually doubt that Cutie knew Cutie had died, so I don't think the disrespect was intentional, but that's the topic I'll touch on later. Cutie issued, in my opinion, a very half-assed response to the whole thing, which I will go over now.
I haven't been part of a team since I was with the Four Peters.
The video Cutie put out was pretty much just a text post, so I'll be treating it as such. It starts out like this. Hello everyone, especially to my avid and loyal subscribers. I would just like to defend and clear myself regarding the tracing issues that some people are accusing me of. To the extent that they said they have proof about the convo that I admitted that I am tracing, the convo that they screen record is edited. To some of my subscribers and friends who knows me, you know that is not the way I make conversations. The wordings used are not mine. So first off, there appears to be a conversation of sorts. I've never seen a conversation referenced, and the fact that Cutie doesn't even show proof of the edited conversation is very interesting, seeing as it's like super easy to prove a conversation didn't happen if it's you who's involved. She doesn't even show screenshots debunking her typing style versus the ones in the alleged conversation, and I feel like that's an odd thing to just mention once and never talk about again, because, you know, if someone faked a conversation with me, that would be like one of the first things I debunked, but yeah, let's just get into the actual meat of the video. I admit that sometimes I use references but forget to give credits to the owner, and I apologize for that, but as you know, using references is different from tracing. I agree on that last line, there is a difference between tracing and referencing, however, Cutie wasn't referencing. As you can see here, the hand from Cutie's video and the hand from Quinny's handsheet are basically just a one-to-one copy of each other. There's also the issue of quote-unquote referencing from her spicy boyfriend meme, which is, again, pretty much just a complete copy. That isn't referencing Cutie, that's called tracing. Usually referencing is just for minor things and is subtle, and it's blended into the drawing by your own original details, and it's usually just a guide, not a template sheet. Sometimes referencing is more obvious, sometimes it's not, but usually when you ref something, the drawings don't overlay nearly perfectly. Forgetting credit is also kind of a lame excuse, seeing as you traced a whole two-person pose, and that can hardly be seen as referencing. All images come from a YouTuber named as Alani T. Yas, who has covered the situation herself, and hopefully I pronounced that name right, but there's also another apology video, however it is from TikTok, and I'm unsure if it's from Cutie herself or not. The grammar mistakes seem to line up, although my only reference for how Cutie types is from this video, so I can't really come to a solid conclusion on that, so I won't be commenting on it. I'll let you guys watch her video, which I will link in the description, and you can see for yourself. Here she is just continuing to not credit. I mean, it can be hard to find original sources on Pinterest, but reverse image searching is a pretty common thing and it's really accessible, so if you have Google, you can do that, so no real excuse there. Same for the chibi hand kiss photo. Usually Google images link back to the website or source that they came from, so it'd be pretty easy to find the original artist for that base too. Again, reverse image searching. Just pop that bad boy in and find the oldest dated image, and there you go, original image. At first I was very devastated and depressed to the point that I considered disabling my account, but with the advice of some of my friends in YouTube and ever-supporting parents to ignore the haters and bashers, because I know to myself that my conscience is clean, I'm creating edits and drawing because this is what I love, I just want to gain friends in this community. Ooh, yikes, this is going into a bit of a victim card territory. Cutie, I know you're young and I know this was not intentional, but I'm young too, and I know enough not to put the fact that I was feeling depressed and devastated in a video where I'm supposed to be owning up to mistakes I've made. It comes across really strongly as a pity card, and if you have been depressed over this, then yeah, that sucks, but try to handle it privately. If you know anything about me, I hate it when people try to play depression cards and apologies. Just talking about mental health online is totally fine, it can be therapeutic, but there's a time and a place for it. When you're under fire and addressing criticisms you've gotten, throwing in the I'm depressed shit seems like you're trying to be a victim. It's also not the best look to lump in people who are genuinely criticizing you and giving you advice with quote haters and bashers. This slide annoys the absolute hell out of me because it reads so strongly like a pity me plea that I just can't take it seriously. I don't really care why you're doing edits or why you're in the community. You made a mistake and you should just apologize for it. I understand this is probably Cutie's first time in drama, so she obviously doesn't know how to address it properly, so just take this as some advice. There's pretty solid evidence you traced. Some things you didn't trace, some things you did, and apologize for the things you did do wrong. Just don't lump in mental health issues with a statement like this one, because it just looks like you're trying to manipulate the feelings of your audience. I don't know. Just don't let yourself into an echo chamber where all you're getting is blind support, because blocking out criticism is detrimental for your own growth and it also hurts your public image. Cutie basically ends the video with proof of things that she didn't trace and quotes herself on the last slide for some reason. Again, advice, don't do that. It makes you look full of yourself and it's just kind of weird in general. Overall, this video should have at least had the words "I'm sorry" in there somewhere, besides the part where you apologize for not crediting your quote-unquote references. Tracing isn't the end of the world, and a simple "sorry, I won't do it again, I thought it was referencing and it clearly wasn't, I'll do better in the future" is literally all it would have taken for the video to have been received better by the community. I feel like I need to reiterate that Cutie is, again, young, and she doesn't have a huge platform, so I am by no means claiming her apology was intentionally malicious or bad. She just needs to learn how to address controversy correctly. My advice is to get into the commentary community, because there's actually a lot of videos where various creators' apologies are picked apart on a near molecular level, and watching those can really give you a strong start when addressing situations like this. In my opinion, I think Cutie is so used to using gotcha as a base that she just assumed tracing was the same thing when it really isn't. I'll go over in the next segment the difference between tracing something from a game or pre-existing media with proper credits and tracing artists with no credits. There's a pretty big difference between tracing something and using a reference. Let's take me, for example. I like to do sprite edits. For example, this one. This is tracing, and I know that when I post this stuff, I don't claim to have drawn it as my own. I explicitly say, hey, I traced this to make it look like my own character. A lot of people do that, and that's fine, because there's no real harm in making those kinds of edits as long as it's credited. To be clear, not saying you trace is just as bad as saying this is my own work, because then people will automatically think, hey, this is this person's work, because they don't have a source to say otherwise. Referencing is taking an image and then using that as a guide for your work. Cutie clearly traced, as the overlays are pretty much exactly the same with some added details. Now, tracing can actually help you improve your art, and I know for a fact that I learned a lot from doing those sprite edits, especially with like clothing physics and wrinkles and all that. However, it's important to learn from tracing and incorporate what you learned in your own art, and not just post the things you trace claiming that they're your own. Sprite edits are generally more accepted than tracing a regular artist's work because, you know, they're sprites and are usually attached to a game or a separate work of media, and they aren't individual works in the sense that the sprites are tied to, like I mentioned before, pre-existing work. It's kind of weird to trace from standalone artists and post it publicly, even with credit, because there's likely only one person behind that drawing, being the artist in question.
Hello. I just wanted to tell you that
There's been a lot of people recently jumping to the defense of Cutie, and there's, you know, to an extent, not a problem with that. It's fine to defend someone you're a fan of, but some people are just being unreasonable or not thinking things through. A lot of people are pulling the "but she's depressed" card on people who are just covering the situation or giving valid critiques, but I don't doubt that there are some people that are actually being rude or over the top, but let me remind you that Cutie is a public figure, and while she is younger, she's absolutely not exempt from criticism or scrutiny, or even just people being rude to her. Obviously, there are limits to what should be said about her because, again, child, but by having a YouTube account, she's opened herself to criticism and negativity by default, and if she can't handle that, maybe it's just better for her to not have an online presence for her own sake. There are ways to deal with the stress of having a channel or having people be kind of rancorous to you. I stopped reading comments regularly and was more open with my friends about emotional issues while still being willing to accept the criticism I get. There's always a good middle ground you can find, and a lot of these kids just see it as purely black and white, where there can be no hate or else poor Cutie's gonna be depressed. It's a touchy subject, but for the most part, keep your mental health issues out of trivial drama like this. I understand I likely can't equate my experience on YouTube to Cutie's because from the start I have done fairly controversial videos where she's only posted animation memes. Obviously I've gotten a lot more pushback throughout my years as a YouTuber because, again, I was pretty rude, but Cutie likely isn't cut out to deal with the negativity she's just suddenly getting. There are a lot of people who are preaching to just forgive her, but how exactly are we supposed to forgive someone who never apologized or even admitted what she did was wrong? Cutie is insisting that she didn't do anything wrong, but she kinda did by tracing. This is a way more trivial drama, obviously, but that doesn't mean she shouldn't still be held accountable for her actions. A proper response from her should look like an apology where she explains why she traced, and a proper response from the community should just be people respectfully agreeing to disagree, or civil discussions with little to no name-calling. There are a lot of people crying and shaking about how they just want the drama to stop, when in reality you can hardly call this shit drama. It's mainly just people asking for an apology for tracing. The video Cutie put out hardly explained anything, just her admitting to quote-unquote referencing and debunking other claims. Still doesn't change the fact that she traced. traced, and there's also the question floating around of why it matters, and like I mentioned earlier, Quinny Arts is dead, and Cutie traced from her. At the very least, respond to that bit and apologize to her and other artists that she traced. It matters because Cutie has to learn that tracing isn't referencing, criticism is not hate, and as well as stealing from others just being bad in general. I actually saw a comment saying just let people trace if they want to trace, like are you actually serious? Stealing from artists isn't cool, funky, or fresh, and I can't expect these people to be super strong in the critical thinking department because they are just kids, but Christ, do some of these people not even read their comments before posting them? There's a lot of people blowing this way out of proportion saying that if the drama keeps going, Cutie's gonna quit, and to that I say if Cutie quits because of this, maybe she wasn't cut out for YouTube in the first place. Scrolling through her comment section was mostly supportive, some of the comments were negative, but the worst things I saw were just people saying things like unsubbing or I can't believe I was a fan or pretty tame shit like that. Nobody's calling her evil or going apeshit or anything, and if they are, then they're the minority. Most of the comments I saw were confused that this was even drama, and the ones that were negative were extremely tame and very constructive. The like to dislike ratio is pretty good as well, and if this is what makes someone quit a nearly 500k sub channel, then there's probably more going on with you than everyone else. If you can't separate polite criticism from actual hate, then there's no place for you on a platform. Criticism is an essential part of being a content creator, especially if you're in the art community, and believe it or not, just because it's not positive feedback doesn't mean it's hate.
Happy Pride Month, Tupac. Your rhymes are clearly gay.
So yeah, that's about it for this video, and to wrap it up, I'll just give a quick verbal TLDR about my thoughts on the situation. Cutie's explanation video was lackluster, and it felt like she was kind of trying to get us to pity her. It should have been an apology video because it's very clear that she did trace, and at the very, very least, she should have at least apologized for tracing from Quinny, who passed away in February of this year, because that's mega disrespectful. She must have known about Quinny's status at least after the video because there were a lot of comments talking about it. Her fans should realize that Cutie made a mistake and shouldn't be defending her so rabidly. The apology felt rushed, and Cutie definitely should have consulted an outside source, not just fans, friends, or family about her statement. There's no excuse for forgetting credit as consistently as she does, and there's also no reason for her to not know the sources of her refs, as reverse image search does exist. This is not a major, earth-shattering drama, but I feel like it should be talked about as Cutie obviously needs help in terms of reacting to controversies. And if Cutie is as depressed as she says she is over this relatively minor scuffle, perhaps being a YouTuber just isn't for her. Getting into pointless drama is basically a rite of passage for most YouTubers, and getting in negativity is also just part of the job, so if that's not something you think you can handle, just do yourself a favor and skedaddle. At the end of the day, this drama is pretty much pointless because literally everyone in the gacha community traces, and if you're gonna go apeshit on Cutie, go apeshit on the rest of the community for tracing gacha characters. Tracing isn't cool, but it's not something that you need to end someone's career over. The people that want to cancel her or crucify her are obviously nuts, and I'm just here to critique the response. I couldn't care less about the tracing itself, other than yeah, don't do it and claim it's yours. With that being said, thank you for watching, be sure to subscribe if you like this video, as I do plenty more like it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!